products, there can be two types of in-app products. Basically, one is, in fact, three types. One is consumable, other is non-consumable, and other one is subscriptions. Consumable are basically the purchase items that can be bought multiple times. Like imagine virtual currency. So virtual currency can be bought multiple times. There is no restriction on how many times that that the player needs to buy, because as the user will be using the virtual coins, there will be a need to purchase again. So these are usually termed as consumable products. The other one is non-consumable. Non-consumable is like a content that you can sell only one time. So consider level 2 you want to sell, and it's not like you can sell that same level multiple times. So these will come under non-consumable items. Another option is removing the ads. Once the user removes the ad, most likely you won't let them to purchase that in-app product again, because already they paid for it. So these are usually categorized as non-consumable. And the other one is subscriptions. As I mentioned, if you have anything like a pay-per-use kind of model, for example, with respect to games, because you want to offer a particular machine gun for 1 month period, and during that period, the user will be able to use that machine gun. So that's where the subscriptions will be helpful. So you'll be setting a subscription saying that use this particular gun or use all of the guns for 1 month time, and you need to pay this much money for the subscription. And if the subscription ends up, they need to renew it if they really want to use it again. And coming to the in-app purchases, we need to be aware of a few things, like the user experience. Basically, consider you bought remove ads in a product, okay, and which lets your user to remove the ads from the whole app. So you bought it, and you bought it in one device, in your in device A, let's assume, okay. And when the player logs into device B, and if he sees the ads again, that's a bit problematic thing. So it definitely hurts the player experience. So in that aspect, iOS and Android both has some constraints, like if it is going to be a non-consumable product, make sure that it's available on all the devices. So whenever the user shifts a device with his profile again, when he logs in, definitely he'll have the same experience, like as he already bought that particular non-consumable product, he won't be able to see the ads again. And before selling any in-app purchases, and before let's say if you want to sell a machine gun or level 2, okay, so you need to give an experience at least. Like once the app starts, if you prompt for a purchase, that doesn't make any sense for the player. So first you need to give an idea of what exactly the game is going to be, what experience it has. Based on that, you need to offer it. So these are the general user experience terms. And coming to the setup. Setup, basically, you need to for in-app purchases to show up in your app. There is some setup on both iOS and Android. Like you need to go to their dashboards. You need to set up. You need to give the details about your in-app product items, and then you need to set a price. You need to set a price. You need to set a type, what type of in-app purchase it is, as it's consumable or non-consumable, or a subscription model. And availability. Availability is basically where exactly this in-app purchase is available. Are you going to show it in every country? Do you have any specific pricing for each country? And all these details you can set it on dashboards. So do you guys, any of you guys have, as you already deployed to stores, did you target only Android or both iOS and Android?
Currently, everyone is targeting Android only. I think iOS, I think many students not yet started. For Play Store, I think many of the students have deployed their games to Play Store using Android for Android platform.
Okay.
They are not into iOS until now.
Okay, so for the rest of the discussion, I'll be limiting the should I limit it to iOS?
No, you can explain both Android and iOS, so that anyway they will be shortly going to iOS also, but they
Okay.
will have an idea on that. So please, you can go ahead.
Okay, sure. So yeah, coming to the creating the in-app products, as I mentioned, the platform or the iOS platform, iOS needs to know what exactly are the in-app products that are being offered by your product. So for that, you need to configure, you need to do some setup on their dashboards. So let's go through the setup once. We'll just go through very quickly. Okay, just a second. So, okay. Can you see my screen? Hello.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
I mean, this App Store Connect screen you can see, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is a place where just a second. Okay, you need to go to the in-app purchase part. This is a place where you need to add the product, and you can go to manage, and you can click on plus button over here, and then it will take you to the option where you can create a in-app purchase. So you usually give a reference name to it, and you usually give a product ID as well. This is actually the unique ID that you give to this product. Let's say if your product is for level 2, you mention it like com dot your company name dot app name dot the level 2 or something. So it's a normal standard, but it doesn't mean to be like it should be this form alone. But it's just a general practice to give a com dot product company dot product name kind of style. So yeah, you set the pricing, and that's it. I mean, once you once you complete these details, you're done with in-app product purchase, and this particular product ID is the one that you will be referring in your code. So you need to, once you're done with this setup, you need to make a note of these product IDs, and from your code you need to fetch the details of this product ID. If you just fetch the product details, when you're trying to fetch the product details, you need to use this ID. So this is the reference for getting the details. And next, coming to Android. Okay, let's go from start. So this is you just select your app, and before using this dashboard, you need to subscribe for you need to buy the licenses for accessing this, and yeah, going to monetize. Just go to monetize products, in-app products. Yeah, this is the place where you usually company dot product name dot level 2. So you just give a name and description. These are the, once you fetch the details, these are the details that you are going to show it within your app. So describe very much clearly so that the user will understand for what he's purchasing. And you can set the price, and yeah, that's it. Once you click on save, you create a new in-app purchase product. And this one also have a product ID, and you need to make a note of these particular IDs, and then so that you can fetch from your code. Yeah. So I'll be giving very high overview of how to set it up, so that, I mean, once you are exactly using it, you will definitely get an idea of what it is about. So I won't be going in detail, so that just to reduce the time that it takes, because it takes a lot of time just to set it up just to explain each and every part of it. Definitely it takes time, but it's very self-explanatory, so I don't want to focus much time on it. So yeah, coming to the limitations of in-app purchases. So in-app purchases are mainly for digital content alone. Like if you want to sell, a car, that's not where you use in-app purchase. Or if Myntra sells a particular costume, they can't use in-app purchases. That's because in-app purchases are mainly for digital products alone, where the consumption is within the app. Let's say your gun, its consumption is within the app. Level 2, its consumption is within the app. So it's only for these kind of products. And for each product that is purchased, imagine if it costs $100, $30 will be taken by Apple and Android on each platform, and remaining 70% will be deposited to your account. So 30% cut is a standard in the current market, the current mobile market. And yeah, these are the things that you need to be aware, so that it's easy for planning your product accordingly. And small note on real money gaming. Real money gaming is basically, are you guys aware of MPL? Have you played MPL games anytime?
Yes, sir.
So we have not played, but heard a lot about it.
Okay, Dream 11, yeah, Dream 11 2. Okay, MPL is basically an app where you can put your money, you can spend your money for entering a particular game, for playing a particular game, and you can earn rewards as well in the form of real currency. So the kind of model won't work on Android, whereas on iOS it's allowed. So when you're planning any games as such, make sure that you're aware that you're not legal on Android. So if you see MPL or any other real money gaming apps won't be available on Android, just for this reason, because Google won't allow this real money gaming apps. So yeah, I love this part because I can have some interaction. You guys are very silent, so yeah. If you have any questions, just let me know about in-app purchase so that we can move on to game services later. Yeah, this is a time that for you to speak, so I can take some rest. Hello. Yeah, Tamil Selvan.
Aipa, can you demonstrate on the in-app purchase everything on the Unity so that the students will have an idea about that as per our discussion?
Yeah. That's why it's better if we have it in a separate session, like for configuring it, basically because
Your voice is not clear, sorry.
Yeah, what I was saying was it's better to have separate session for that.
No, actually, the students will get an experience on that if you are able to understand.
Okay. I'll do one thing. I'll just go through that once we have time at the end, so that because there are a lot of other content that to deliver today.
Okay, fine, go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, next part is game services. Game services are basically covers these services usually cover leaderboards and achievements. This will help in engaging the users well. And just here are some use cases for game services. Like you can create a competition. You can say that whoever comes, in this week. So in this week, whoever comes first, those will be shown in the splash screen, just as an example. So you can reward the players based on the toppers for the whole week, for the period. And this actually creates a social competition among players. So your players will definitely get more involved into the game and try to improve their skill set. The other one is achievements. Achievements are usually the badges. Like consider you finish 10 levels. you'll be awarded with a badge. You code it such a way that the player will be awarded with a badge. So these badges are provided by the native features, again native platforms, and these are termed as achievements. So achievements can be anything basically. If you just say that, okay, collect 500 points, that's an achievement. If you kill some 10 enemies, you can term it as an achievement. So all these achievements will definitely drive the player to come back to finish their progress, or to finish their, to improve their skill set. And other one is increased retention. As these are very much close to the player, definitely these will create an retention factor, and these will definitely consider you have daily rewards, okay, daily tasks or daily achievements, where those achievements, if for finishing those achievements, he will definitely come back to the game, and it eventually improves the retention of the game. Yeah. So concepts involved in game services, or I'm trying to abstract both iOS and Android here. So once you exactly implement on iOS or Android, you don't feel any difference, because the abstraction level that I'm choosing is such that it will have the concepts are covered on both the platforms. So authentication is basically for using any of these features, like as leaderboards and achievements are connected to a player, you need to have the player authenticated, so that they can start using their score, and they can submit their scores to leaderboards, or they can report their progress to the achievements. So authentication is one aspect where you let the player log in into the system with his credentials. Once it's successfully log in, then he can start reporting the scores, and your code can report the scores to the underlying platform. So when it comes to achievements, you have multiple types of achievements. One is one shot achievement. Basically, once you report it, it means that achievement is revealed. So once you are let's say once you entered level 1, and the level 1 achievement is like awesome level 1 achievement. So I assume that just as an example. So once you enter the level 1, that means it's a one-time event. So these can be turned as one-shot achievements. And there are other achievements types like incremental achievements, where these are basically step-based, where, for example, win 50 games is one kind of incremental achievement, where it's stepwise, like 50 games are like not like a one-time thing. So you keep on maintaining a progress for it, and this progress will be reported to the native platform for finishing that achievement. So yeah, coming to leaderboards are basically you can create a leaderboard for daily, weekly, and all time. And these, based on the time-based thing, based on the time factor, it will derive all the standings within a leaderboard. And for creating a leaderboard, you need to specify what type it is, like what kind of score type, what kind of leaderboard it is, whether it's the score that is reported will be considered lowest as first or highest as first. Like for example, within a game, if you have a racing game where time is a factor, so here time will be our score, and whoever achieves the lowest first will be termed as the first player. And when it comes to shooting, assume that number of kills is your score. So number of kills, whoever achieves a higher kill count can be termed as a first player. So you have an option to set either lowest first or highest first within your leaderboards. And yeah, these are very high level concepts what's involved in both achievements and leaderboards. And yeah, just to have a look, these are the roughly high examples of how to use achievements and leaderboards. So just go through it. And you might have already observed this in many games. These are very standard practice, and this can't be skipped as well when you're developing an app. Coming to creating achievements. So let's try through how to create an achievement on Google Play. Okay, just go to Grow section and then go to Setup and Management and Achievements. You can add an achievement by giving a name, description, and upload the icon. And you can mention it whether it's an incremental achievements and number of steps that are required to finish it. So as I mentioned, 50 games, winning 50 games is one achievement. So usually mention it as 50 over here. And you need to, for every game he won, you just increase the step and report the progress. So once it reaches 50, then only this particular achievement will be unlocked. Another option is you can set the state of the achievement, basically revealed or hidden. Revealed is basically it will show up the icon, what kind of achievement it is. If it's hidden, until it's reported at least once, it will be hidden. And how many points that you want to allocate for this player. And this is not, these are actually useful for getting the overview of how the player profile is. This will be used internally. So yeah, once you're done, you just need to save it and you will be given an ID for it again. So similar to what we have seen in in-app purchases, where product ID is one of the IDs. The same way, this particular ID will be useful for you to refer this particular achievement from code. So if you want to get the details of this particular achievement, you just need to use this ID and fetch from the code, so that you get all the details about whatever details that you have given, like name, description, how many steps it needs to take, and how many points it can allocate and all. Yeah. So next is our leaderboards. If you want to add a leaderboard, you just go to in the setup in the play game services, go to the leaderboard section, click on create a leaderboard, and give the name. How many, how it should be displayed is where, the format, how you want to be displayed, you can specify the format. And then sort order, as I mentioned, largest first or smallest first, whether it's yours is a time-based game where you want lowest to be the first player, first time, and smaller and largest first is basically number of kills, as I mentioned in the earlier example. Tampering protection, basically it helps in Google removing, whether Google needs to monitor a particular leaderboard or not. There you might have seen many players suddenly jumps from one score to another score by hacking the system. So these things can be stopped by Google if you turn it on. Yeah, and that's it. Once you're done, just save the tournament. So save the leaderboard, and as usual, you will get an ID. And this ID is required to refer it from the game. Okay, and the next part is about credentials. Yeah, it's a bit tough to understand, but once you get the concept of it, it's pretty much easy. And most of the around 99% of the errors while development are due to this part, basically. Wrongly setting it up. So when most of the cases you'll have a sign-in failed sign-in failed error when you're trying to authenticate. So as I mentioned, for using all these features, as this particular feature is connected to a player, you need to have them signed in ahead. Then only you can report the progress and report the scores. So for having the proper authentication system, there's something called credentials that you need to add. So basically, these credentials are something like this. Okay, let's go to configuration. Yeah, you need to click on add credential. So you might be wondering what exactly is a credential. Credential is basically, it will tell the Google servers that this particular APK or whichever executive that you're using, that particular APK is allowed to log in, is allowed to use the game services, or is allowed to use the Google Play services on that particular app. So you need to configure this, and how you'll achieve it is based on something called SHA fingerprint. SHA fingerprint is assumed that it's just some key for your app, okay, and this particular key, this particular fingerprint will be saved it in the on their Google on their dashboards. So you just need to create one, create auth client. Okay, let's go to here. I'll just run through it very quickly because this is very much important topic over here. So you'll say that you want to authenticate from Android device. So you select the application type as Android and you provide the application package name for your app. And this is the fingerprint that you need to add. So this is how it looks. And for example, let me quickly grab one thing here. Okay. So this is the simplest way to get the fingerprint. Okay, just a second. Just give me a second. Okay. This is not the only way, but this is a very quick way to do it. Once you create your APK, okay, what you need to do is you need to get this particular value, okay, by typing this command like key tool print shirt jar file. You just provide the APK file, and it just prints some secured keys. This particular SHA1 value needs to be entered over here. So once you enter it, it means that this particular APK, which you're trying to log in when the player tries to log in, once you're trying to authenticate, as this particular SHA is already there in the Google servers. Yeah, here, as it's already there in the Google servers, it will say that, okay, this particular APK is allowed to use the Google services. That's how the credentials work. So make sure that whenever you see the sign-in file, when you're trying to authenticate, you make sure that you set up the fingerprints properly. Okay. And we're done with the game services. So yeah, so this particular IDs, whatever we collected once after creating these items in the dashboard, you need to make a note of it separately. And those are the keys, those are the identifiers that you need to use within your game, so that you can get the details about those whatever entries that you have created. So yeah, next is cloud services. Sorry. Cloud services are a way to save the player progress. Like consider your player is in level 50 and he has some virtual coins and all. So at most he can save it on his device, and if he wants to if he wants to play from another device, his progress won't be shown because it's not accessible from another device. So for this reason, there will be some central server where the whole progress is maintained, and you don't need to pay anything for this when using this particular service, because as it's provided by the native platform, both iOS and Android. On iOS, iCloud is the one which will be used for saving the data, and whereas on Android, you basically use saved games feature of Google Play services. So you don't need to go much detail about these two, like iCloud and saved games, because there are lots of other plugins which can abstract the whole thing, and you don't need to worry about those, and you just need to worry only on how exactly what are the concepts that are involved. Okay, and yeah, so use cases are like we can save the player profiles, like his profile name, details, and whatever details that link to the profile. And you need to you can see the progress of the player as well. Like as I mentioned, level 50 is the player progress, and once he jumps to another device, you can download the content from the cloud, and you can take the player from that particular level, like level 50. So there's some concepts within this as well, like cloud services. There's something called cloud copy, local copy. So cloud copy is basically whatever data that you push to the cloud is termed as cloud copy. So at any point, whenever the user shifts on the device, cloud copy is the one that is going to be downloaded on his device. So I'll just give an brief whiteboard sketch for this. Yeah. So assume that here is the cloud. Okay. And this is device A. And this is device B. Sorry, I can't write properly. Okay. So consider the player is at level 52 in this device. And what happens is this particular data, when it's connected to cloud services, it keeps syncing with the cloud. So whatever data that is there on whatever data that was saved here locally, it will be pushed to the cloud. And the cloud will have data about 52 level. And when this particular device B, when he jumps onto his device B, when he tries to connect to cloud services will download the copy, like whatever is there on the cloud. And this 52 level will be over here, so that he can start right from 52 level instead of starting from scratch again. So this will be very much required. This is more like a requirement for any game, basically, because nowadays having 2 to 3 devices is very common within the within every home. So just make sure you use this particular service, and it comes with a free tag as well. So it's good to use it. And there are limitations on this as well. Like on iOS, you have a limitation of 1 MB, and on Android, it's 3 MB. So okay, yeah, Android it's 3 MB. So you need to plan your data such that it will be fitting in this thing as well, in this particular constraint. Consider you want to save a profile picture, it doesn't make any sense here because it easily crosses that size. So make sure that you have mostly the text content that is being saved, and you should have some other forms of storing the profile pictures or whichever data that is much higher. So in most cases, many big apps, when almost all the top apps will definitely use this service because it's very much stable rather than rolling their own service. So, and this good amount like 1 MB and 3 MB is pretty good sizes. You don't need to worry about number being small, but it can hold a lot of content. Okay, other one is conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is basically consider in this thing only. Assume that before committing this 52 level, assume that there's a network connection. Okay, so the user jumps down to B, and he will see that there's no content on cloud, and he needs to start from level 1. Okay, and he went till level, assume that he went till level 10. Okay, now this particular device connects to the cloud, and it will push the data as 52. That means that's the latest data. Okay, now once as the data is being synchronized every time on this device, it will find a conflict, that it will find a problem that okay, cloud has a 52 level and I have level 10. So at this point, you need to jump into conflict resolution, where you need to decide. You will get a call back saying that this is the status of the cloud copy and whatever copy that you have, and you will be given a chance to pick whichever you want. Like you want 52 level progress, or you want to just continue with your level 10. So ideally, when you will be choosing 52, and the choice is with you as a developer. You have the choice to or define how it needs to resolve the conflict. So conflict resolution is the toughest thing, but there are solutions for making it much easier as well. Uh, let's say in your cloud copy, I mean your cloud data, you'll be saving the how much length the player is playing as well. Let's say the player session is for reaching 52 level, the player session is 3 hours. Again, for reaching the level 10, the player session is 15 minutes. Definitely, you can consider that as the factor to resolve the conflict. So, as losing 3 hour content is much more problematic when compared to losing 15 minutes content. So, at that point, you'll resolve it such that you'll consider the cloud copy and discard the local copy. So that's with conflict resolution. And then saved games on Android, basically it's pretty easy because as you already went through the game services, so it's an easy option here. Just a minute. Just go to configuration and click on edit properties, and you just need to switch it on. So the saved games is in fact a part of Google Play services, so it's just an option to switch it on. So once you switch it on and click on save, it will work right away. Like you can start saving your player's content to the cloud. And note that this one, as I mentioned, just to make it clear, this 1 MB and 3 MB is per player. It's not for the whole app. It's per player. So whoever is logged in successfully, they can use still 1 MB of storage. And this will be saved in their Drive profile only. So in their Drive, Google Drive, the data will be saved. And when it comes to this iOS, it will be saved in iCloud account. Okay, and next, okay, and we'll have a question section at the last. Okay. Yeah, next comes the biggest part, like notifications. So notifications are basically right now on your app, on your phone, probably you might have 1 or 2 notifications already delivered during this session as well. Like the thing is, the good thing with notifications is it provides a way to give the player a personalized message. Like, hey, it just mentions your name and say that, okay, you especially have this offer. If you want to avail it, just come to the app and do this particular action or task. So the good thing with notifications is that's the only way a developer, you as a developer can talk to the player, because there are no other means. This is the only medium where you can directly communicate with the player. So whatever you say, definitely it's the engaging factor within notifications is definitely the user will try to see what exactly it is. So if you say that, okay, this is Diwali, you are given 10 mission guns for free. Okay, definitely the player will have an option to read the content because it's directly displayed on his home screen, and definitely they'll drive the player to your game. And you might be wondering why the need for getting the player to the game. So this basically is termed as retention. Retention is basically getting the player hooked to the game. Like once you play a game and you just kept it aside, and there are more chances that you won't be opening the game again after some time. So notifications are a way to say that, okay, this is a game that you have on your already installed. You just open it and do a task so that you'll get some rewards. So notifications are good in that aspect for increasing the retention. And retention, once the player comes back to your app, that you can drive him when you want. Like you can sell your in-app purchase, you can show an ad, you can let them share your game about your game to other players as well. So that's a power that the notification has. So as I mentioned, usually use case of retaining the users. You can get back the users and you can pass the personalized content, specifying their names much closely. And you can segment the players as well. Segment the players in the sense, consider your app is global, and in India, if you want to segment the place within India, and if you want to send a message specific to India that, okay, you have a Diwali offer, what you can do is you can create segments within notifications, and you can say that, okay, this particular India segment, India country geography segment, can receive particular notification about Diwali wishes or something. So that's one use case as well. So coming to the concepts, there are two things mainly: local and push notifications. Local notifications are basically, you don't need any external setup for this, any external server for this. So local notifications can be directly triggered from your code, and it will directly show up in the notification center. Notification center is basically where all the notifications will be shown in your device. And other one is push notifications. These are called as remote notifications as well. These definitely need some setup because these are somewhat personalized content that you'll be sending to the users remotely. So what you'll be doing is, from your backend or from your servers, you'll create a message, and you will inform the native platform servers, saying that this is the message that I want to send to the particular device and particular user, and the particular native servers will send a message to the device. So I'll give a rough idea on how exactly this whole thing works, because it's a bit tough to get initially. So, okay. So let's say this is a device. Okay. And for simplicity, consider these are the native servers. I don't mention what exactly it is, but I'll go into detail later. Native. It's good if there is some text or something. Okay. Yeah, this is much better. Okay. These are native servers. Okay, this is your device, and okay, this is your backend server. Okay. Now, what you usually do is, if you want to send a message from your backend, what you do is you just send a message, send a JSON content, or for simplicity, consider it as a message to native servers. You just inform that native servers that send a message to a particular device. And what this native servers does is it will send a notification to the device, and this particular notification will be shown on the player's device. So for identifying a particular device, because there will be multiple devices within your who are playing the game, right? So to identify this particular device, each device has a token. Okay. So, or usually it's called registration ID as well. So consider it as an ID. Okay. To identify this particular device, it has an ID. So this ID will be, how you get this ID is, you initially, once you launch your app, you initially contact the native servers saying that I want to register for notifications. What it means is, once you register, you are allowed to receive any kind of notifications. So what your app does is, you initially call register push notifications, and this particular call will contact the native servers internally, and this particular thing returns an ID, and this is termed as token ID or registration ID. And this, but as now we know that this particular ID is linked to a particular device. So when you're the same ID, you will be sending to your backend as well. Sorry if it's confusing, but it's very simple concept. But I try my best to explain it, but it's very much required to understand. So this particular ID is sent to the backend server. So now your backend has an ID which can identify a particular device. So what it does is, along with the message, it sends the ID as well, saying that, okay, send a message to this particular ID. And these native servers, as they already know what exactly how to identify a particular device, they'll use that ID and send a notification to this, and that's how the notification is displayed. So I'll give an overview again. Like each device has an ID on its own, has a token on its own, and this particular token it will get it from the native service. Okay, and this particular token will be shared with the backend as well, so that they can directly communicate it. So backend needs to send a message whenever your backend needs to send a message. They definitely route it via native service. This is a requirement that the whole workflow is. That's how the whole workflow is. So whenever your backend needs to send a message, it needs to route through the native service. And these native servers are nothing but APNS on iOS and FCM, if you are aware or not. It's basically Firebase cloud messaging on Android. So these are the servers that are responsible for delivering notifications on device. So if you want your backend to directly send this to your device, it's not possible because underlying native platforms won't allow it. Whatever notification that you send, you need to route it through their servers. So the key takeaways are like every device has a registration ID, and once the registration ID is available, the native servers can uniquely identify a device, and this particular registration ID or token will be saved with the backend, so that backend can send messages to the device. So this is how the whole workflow is. If you want, I can, yeah, here. It's a better one. So once it initially connects to the native servers, it will give a device token, and this device token will be delivered to the phone, to the client basically, and this device token will be shared with your servers as well. So whenever you need to send a notification, you use this device ID or device token and say that, okay, send this message, and the native service will deliver the message. So, and one more thing to notice, the notifications are not reliable basically. Reliable in the sense there could be some times where the message can be missed. So consider you want to send an offer to if you want to send a greeting message to your players saying Diwali, Happy Diwali or something. This content, if it doesn't need to be reliable. Like there are chances where some notification will be missed. Some players won't get the notification, but that's still valid. That's fine. Those are the usual use cases for the notifications. If you want to send some critical data to the player, this is not the concept that needs to be used. These are used for general non-reliable data communication style. That's where the notifications will be helpful. Yeah, as I mentioned already, how it works. It involves token, it involves native servers, it involves a backend for sending the message and all. Let's come to how exactly, what are the parts of notification? So coming to the parts of notification, usually you see a picture, a title, content text, and time of delivery and all. So all these properties, you'll be sending it in the message. As I said, from the backend, you'll be sending a message, right? So there you'll mention that, okay, use content title as Alex, use content text as this particular text, and then use a particular image for this large icon needs to be this particular profile icon or something. All these details you'll be sending into the message, and the message is usually called a payload. Payload is basically a JSON format. Probably you guys are aware of JSON format. Like JSON is considered as like a key value pairs, where you say that, okay, key content title is Alex, content large icon is particular profile picture, and all these details you will mention within the payload. So, and once it is delivered, you can see it, and the player can discard it as per his wish. Or once the player taps on it, it will take to the app directly. So coming to the setup, as I mentioned, native servers on Android is basically handled by Firebase. Firebase is a backend platform where you can configure your cloud messaging, and hell of other services are there as well. So let's only go through notifications alone for this time. And on Android, it's usually called cloud messaging. Yeah, cloud messaging. So Firebase cloud messaging, that's what I meant by FCM here. Firebase cloud messaging. And you can configure it here. You just need to, I think, already enable it. Basically, it's just a straightforward thing. You just need to enable the cloud messaging service, and you need to go to settings here, and you need to use this key for communicating with the native servers. Like here, your backend needs to say that, okay, send a message to this particular token ID. It needs to have an extra authentication as well, or else any backend can send to the FCM. So for native servers to authenticate which app it is, for which app it needs to send, this particular key will be used. Sorry, yeah, this particular server key will be used. Your backend needs to use this, and then send a notification. So that's all for this. Yeah, that's all for this. Okay, next coming up, it's deep links. You guys are there, right? Hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just want to confirm whether you guys are there or not, because there's no sound from your side. Okay. Let's check. Oh, chat. Oh, sorry. I'm not going through the group chat, but I'll just go through it once I'm done with this last topic. Sorry for that. Okay. So deep links. Deep links are basically a way to provide the right content. Okay. So to give an example, you will get an invite from your friend saying that, okay, hey, play this chess game one-on-one. Okay. Assume that you got an invite from your friend when he's playing carom pool. Okay, let's play one-on-one game. And once you click on that particular link, okay, imagine if you're taken to the home screen. Okay, so as you already have no idea about what exactly your friend is trying to tell, you'll be in a position where you know nothing, because once you click on the app, you'll imagine that the app got open and you will have no context of it. So this is a place where deep links will be helpful. Deep links are nothing but just a URL, just a link, which can take to a particular content within an app. So as I said, an example invite, imagine if it is a one-to-one gameplay in the carom pool game. Once you click on the link with deep links integrated, it will directly take you to the one-on-one match, and it will start the match as well. So that's how the deep links are powerful. It will just give the context to the player, and it will be very much useful to drive the new players as well into the games by giving them a context. So one example use case is one-on-one match, or it could be integrating the websites as well. Assume that let's say consider Flipkart. Okay, Flipkart has a listing on their site saying that saying a TV or something. Okay, consider you want to buy a TV, and once you open Flipkart on your mobile browser, okay, and you assume that you search for televisions, and in the listing it shows from Flipkart you have this particular television. Okay, and once you click on television, assume that with deep links it can directly take to the app directly, and it will directly open up the particular television page as well, where you can directly buy it. So imagine without deep links, the system or the app doesn't know how to present the what's the context or how to present it to the user. So without deep links, what happens is once you click on the television, it will directly take to the home screen of the Flipkart, and the whole total user experience is lost over there. So this is very much this is a very upcoming topic as well, which you need to learn on, because if there are designers in this session, probably they can definitely make better use of this. So yeah, so the concepts involved, or I'll take through this very quickly because there's nothing much to explain in this, but you need to understand what it is. So universal links, other one is scheme links. Universal links are basically if you have a server on your own and if you have a website on your own and you want to whenever user clicks on it, you want to open your app directly. That's where the universal links will be helpful. So universal links basically needs a setup on the server. Like each native platform has their own configuration. They will say that, okay, you need to have this particular file in your web server at a particular location, so that whenever a user clicks on a particular website link, we'll authenticate with the servers that whether this particular app is related to it or not, and then open that particular app. The other forms of links as well, like scheme links. Scheme links are not basically unique, so anyone can have those kind of links and directly consider your app has a particular scheme link named iNurture. Okay, the same scheme link I can have as well. So what happens is when you pass that particular link to another user, when the user clicks on it, there will be an option to open which app. Like it will show up a content, it will show up a chooser dialog where you want to either pick your app or my app. Just as an example, scheme links, for example, HTTPS. Assume that you have URL directly with HTTPS, starting with HTTPS. So once a user clicks on it, there are multiple browsers registered to that particular scheme. Like scheme here is HTTPS. So once a user clicks on the particular link, if you have multiple apps installed, it will show up all the apps that can handle this particular link. So it will show up Google Chrome, or it will show up UC browser or whichever thing, and user needs to select it. When it comes to universal links, these are very much seamless in the sense it will right away take to the app. So once you're done with the setup on your servers, so once your user clicks on your website link, it will directly open your app without any intermediate dialogues and all. So this is about universal links. Now coming to the setup, as I mentioned, each platform has their own kind of configuration. Like on Apple, it's usually called Apple App Site Association files, and you need to keep this file in a particular location. I can share you the locations as well later on because it doesn't make any sense to explain it here. So this particular file will inform the inform the platform that, okay, this particular app is linked to this particular website, so it can directly open the app. So just to give an rough idea how it works. Okay. Consider you have your device installed, and this is your backend. Or this is your server, for instance. Okay. So as I mentioned, there are some files that needs to be configured on your website for the underlying OS to identify whether a particular link is related to your app or not. These are called AASA files and app links. So once you place these particular files on your server, okay, once the app is installed, what we'll do is it will fetch these files. It will fetch these files and store it within your device. So whenever you assume that your app is Flipkart, okay, and when the user clicks on, and so you got a message to your WhatsApp, and if you try to click on it, what happens is this particular link, the OS will process this particular link and check if there is any app which has a kind of registration here, like this here, because it already every app, whenever it's downloaded, whenever installed, Apple contacts their servers for these particular files, and these files will have information about what website it belongs to. So whenever the user on WhatsApp, whenever user clicks on Flipkart.com, what it does is underlying system will check if there is any ASA file or app links for that particular website. If it's already registered and if it already has that information, directly it will open this particular application. So yeah, it will directly open your application. Here in this context, it will directly open the Flipkart. That's how the whole thing works. You might be wondering why on once it comes to mobile directly, how from website or how it is getting triggered directly. It's basically based on the deep links configuration alone. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So now I'll just go through the questions that are mentioned, and then we'll have a question session. 1 second. Check the chat. Okay. Yes, sir. Heard it. Any chance of fraud? Like not receiving it. Okay, I didn't get the context, but yeah, can you guys ask the questions so that we can wrap up the session? I'm done with my session, by the way. You need to ask the questions. Hello.
Yes, guys, if you have any questions, you can ask. Any one of you? You can type your question in chat box also.
Yeah, that's fine as well. Actually, if you don't have any question, it means that I delivered exceptionally. I don't think so I did that, but at least some questions would be really great.
I think they have no questions.
It's not possible.
Yeah. Yes, guys, ask questions if you have. Otherwise, we will conclude the session.
Like it can be anything related to the native features. Um, it doesn't need to be a perfect question. I just need some questions. That's it.
Sir, can you please summarize all the things as some of us has joined just now?
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, sir.
Okay, I'll just go through this screen alone so that it's easy. Okay, for the whole session, what I was talking was like for finishing a particular app or for finishing a particular game, you need to have some features that are very much required. Like if you need to monetize your app, you definitely need a native feature called in-app purchases. And if you want to create some social competitions among your players, you need to have feature like game services where you have option to create leaderboards and achievements. If you want to talk to your user or talk to your player much closely, you can send personalized messages with notifications. And if you want to save your progress and save your players' progress, you can use free services like cloud services. And other option is through deep links, you can show the right content to your user. As an example, if you want to invite a player, particular your friend to play a match, okay, deep links will definitely help in driving the particular inviter when whoever you invited your friend within the app, and directly it will let you play the game. So these services are basically very much helpful, and these are very much required as well to finish a particular game, because without in-app purchase, or I don't see any app without having any of these features. Like one or two will definitely be used at some point. So you guys need to be aware of these concepts, or else this session had actually covered most of the topics within 1.5 hours. But usually, for getting the topics only, it will take around 30 days to understand what it is about. So hopefully, you guys might have used it effectively. If you have any kind of questions, you can contact me at Voxel Busters. And still, I'm seeking a few more questions. So yeah, please.
Dear students, I think you can ask some questions which is based on your game's point of view, how you will be integrating on these concepts, whatever Mr. Ayyappan told you today. So that will be able to clear the queries from Ayyappan. Please put your queries either in chat or you can unmute yourself and you can ask your queries.
Yes, don't hesitate, because it's a very friendly session. If you guys need to speak up. I see around more than 30 people are there, right?
52 are there.
Nice. So
Okay, Ivan, from my side, one query regarding this inventory management system. Let's say think about we have our students are making like smaller games. Let's say they have very small assets, it's managing its own game. Think about a game where it has like very big or large like AAA titles. How they are able to manage so much of inventory systems and everything. How that possibility and how their feature updates in the upcoming updates every time there will be lot of inventory coming up. New features will come. Example, I'm playing. I love Shadow Fighter game.
sorry,
I love Shadow Fighter. Because Shadow Fighter various updates every time when I get an update, I'll get a lot of weapons. I get petty coins also. And if you see a lot of real money games, they are also using this currency. I mean, exchanges the coins. How they do that? Can you a little bit throw light on that?
Sure. So for everything, as I mentioned, whenever the player needs to pay some price for a particular item within the product, I mean, within the app or game, they definitely needs to go through the in-app purchase. So there are some topics like inventory management within this purchase process. Basically, management is nothing but what we have done earlier. Like there'll be product IDs for each and every product item. You need to identify initially what kind of products that you want to have, products that you want to have within your game, like level 2, or you want to sell some 500 virtual coins, you want to sell some 1,000 virtual coins. All these basically are inventory items. So these items will have an ID attached, and this ID will be the key for referring them within the game. So so there is no other way other than using in-app purchase. That's a standard on both iOS and Android. And good thing about this, both iOS and Android, is most of the features, I don't know, as if someone designed it and these guys are following it. Both are almost same on both the platforms. So you need to use in-app purchase within when you want to sell some content, and there's no other alternative for that.
So if it is starting from, it may be a small scale game. It's a very small game also, or it is a AAA title game. So the process is same.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, when you're trying to deploy it on iOS, you don't have any other choice.
Do you have any proper workflow or architecture when you commit to the in-app purchases or inventory system or anything? Do you have any specific architecture for it?
Architecture in the sense, I mean, you want to see
Like a flow chart. Like example, this has to be in this flow only. It has to be in this particular protocol or flow chart, so that would be defining stages very perfectly. Is there any way like that which you follow in the industry from your point of view?
Yes, sorry, I don't have it at the moment, but I can create one if you guys.
Yeah, please. So that should, because I want them to understand that when they incorporate the in-app purchase or inventory system, to have a proper flow. It's not like randomly adding something, or there is no any particular flow in it. So they have to understand the flow on it. So that is the reason. Yeah, please throw the light on it.
I can create a mind note for it, and I can share it with you guys if it's helpful. Yeah.
And one more note to all the students, we have known that APIs and SDKs, a lot of integration and everything. But Mr. Ayyappan is the one person who's like he and his friend who's literally creating the APIs and selling a lot of APIs. Where they are literally developing an API is a separate career in itself. And I think Hypa and his team is working on that. So right now, game designing, game development, game art, or game tester as its own career. In the same way, even game development, API development, API designing, the SDK designing is also a separate career in it itself, and it has a larger market also. So I want any of you, like if you have any of questions on that areas, I think you can ask Mr. Ayyappan on this. I think you have a question in chat, Ayyappan.
Okay. Just a minute.
From Neeraj. Can you drop your questions in chat also? It's fine.
Yeah.
Because this is a very important topic. I prefer everyone to have a lot of questions.
But I think it's from me, right? Okay. If we are uploading our game on free platforms such as itch.io, then how would we deal with in-app purchases? Okay. So coming to, I mean, whatever I covered, it's related to the mobile platforms alone. It's just basically a web platform where there is no specific rule for each asset. Like you can have Paytm integrated, or it can have any credit card system integrated within itch.io. I don't see any constraints within itch.io. But whatever I mentioned till now, it's basically on mobile platforms on iOS and Android, where you must go through their in-app purchase model, and where you need to give away 30% of the share to them, and that's the only option available on mobiles. So on itch.io, you can directly go with any credit card payments.
I think Neeraj, that serves your doubt. I think. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. You please continue with your flow chart or whatever you call this.
Yeah. As Jay was mentioning,
Yeah.
I don't say that making middleware, I mean, as we are already doing, it's not a great way to earn. career on its own, of course, it is, but it's not a way to earn as much as a designer or game developer or a tester. The thing is, the reason why we have chosen is we have found the problem with this particular services, native features, for example. So we came up with plugins deployed on Asset Store, and most of the times, to be honest, it's not an active income; it's more like a passive income. But we are able to sustain with that model that's there. But you guys, if you have any, it doesn't restrict to only developers alone. Even the artists, even the designers can make plugins and deploy it on store, and you can earn the passive income. Parallelly, you can work on something else. So it's a kind of good thing for you guys because you are already studying, right? So you don't need to spend much time on it. If you just get an idea on how it works, probably you can start earning as well.
Currently, I think you have created a one plugin. We were discussing about that, right? So, what is the difference? Can you show about that plugin and can you a little bit open up for our students about that?
Okay, sure. Actually, I don't want to advertise this product, but if it
No,
really,
they will get an idea about that so that tomorrow, in case if they want to get into this field on creating plugins or SDKs, they will be able to understand. For that reason, they can learn this. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Can you see my screen? I just opened that link. Okay, this is a Unity Asset Store. You guys might be aware of it already. Unity Asset Store is a marketplace for selling your content. Can post your plugins so that other developers or other game artists can make use of it. So the plugin what we have created is cross-platform native plugins. Basically, it tries to whatever I have covered today. It tries to abstract on both iOS and Android so that you don't need to go in particular details. Like consider when it comes to cloud services, you don't need to really know about iCloud or Google Play services. We just provide an API and you just need to use it, and it right off the bat you can directly start running it on your device. So it has many features, but it's basically for iOS and Android. So these are the usual features that are covered within the plugin. And if you guys have any questions on this, or not just specific to this plugin, but if you have any questions related to the native features implementation, you definitely can mail to me so that I can help you out.
One last question from my side, Aipa. How do you think this as a career? For example, creating plugins. Do you think it will take a major role in the industry? How you think? How you suggest the students about this? How to go about this thing as a career, like creating plugins and creating APKs, or it may be SDKs or shaders, or it may be anything for Unity, or it may be for any game engine.
Okay. Let's say that it's called software for game developers. Okay, let's say how it as a career. As I already mentioned, don't consider it as a mainstream income initially, because that's not how it works, because it takes a lot of time to get into it. Basically, it's more of it's very much core into the platform, because you need to find a problem first. Like consider you have developers who are facing a particular problem. Okay, you need to identify the problem. You need to see whether it's a generalized problem or not, like whether all the game developers are facing the same issue. And if so, if you find that there's a particular problem which has definitely a lot of audience, then you can jump onto it by saying that okay, by starting implementing on it, like a particular plugin for that problem. So for us, I'll just give an overview on how our journey started within plugins. Like initially, we have in 2014 or 15, we had very limited plugins, and every time whenever we need to code in Unity, we need to know each and every platform specifications. Like we need to know about iCloud, we need to know about Fireplace cloud messaging, and you need to know about in-app purchase, internal details, everything you may need to be aware of. Okay, there are no plugins at that time, and users used to, developers, user basically, or developers used to face a problem like if they need to implement on iOS, they used to have a different set of code. If they need to implement on Android, they need to have a separate set of code. So managing it and the knowledge, what knowledge they need to have is numerous. And the amount of data that they need to know is really huge. So at that time, we found the problem that this is a common problem for everyone, for each and every game developer. If they want to publish to iOS and Android, definitely they need to go through this. So that's where we found out the problem. And then we started implementing our own plugins, saying that you don't need to implement natively on each and every platform. You don't need to know the internals. We just follow our standard unique KPI. And if we just implement, use that within Unity, that's it, you're done. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to know anything specific to the iOS. So any Unity developer who never worked on iOS or who never worked on Android can still deploy on iOS and Android. So that was our use case. That was our problem that we tried to solve. And if you feel that, okay, there's a particular problem which can be generalized, definitely you can step into it and you can start creating your own plugins for it. And it definitely has value. I don't say that it doesn't have any value. Actually, our new products are based on our previous plugin. So definitely there's a value in it. But you need to make sure that you find the right problem by evaluating the game developers. You need to talk to more game developers. You need to see the problems. That's how you need to go about. And coming to the designers, okay, for the artists specifically, artists, if they want to create some content on asset store, it's much easy for them. So it's like if you're good at 3D modeling or if you're good at animation, you can directly create the content and publish to it. And the problem with here is again you need to be aware of what kind of content really attracts. Consider if you make Minecraft kind of style art, so definitely there should be an demand for it. Then only you can go further. So you can create some general assets like trees or something, which will be helpful as well. So definitely it's a kind of passive income. I don't say that active income initially, but over the time, definitely it goes to a mainstream.
I think that's all the answers for everyone. I think so. But add on to this, as you told, you need to discuss with the developers and everything you said, right? I'm been into a lot of communities right now into Unity. So I think there is a number of requirements are there in API development. To be very frank in this point of thing. Example, today we had a discussion with one more set of students where we are talking about the Unity analytical portion, where they don't get each user's data completely or users completion, or example, if they're going to come into the user any application, how long they stay or how long where our user is going through. In that kind of an options, collecting the user data is not much available in Unity APIs. They are depending on to create something different every time. So this is an example I'm talking about one element. Like this, there are n number of elements which Unity developers are required for some support on APIs. If you talk about 3D modelers or something, right? I have seen like suddenly one STL file. I think I'm not sure, some few formats that APIs will be, or it may be for it can be anything. If you see many of the things, right? When you talk about real money payment games coming out in the market, where the payment in the gateways APIs like that. So like this, if you see, there are n number of APIs are required always in the market. Only thing is how, like, you guys came out with the cross-platform right now. Like this, I think if any of the students are very good in programming, they can find their future in that angle. I think that is the right serve the answers for everyone. I think so. I hope you agree with that.
Yes, of course. Yeah, as I mentioned, it doesn't need to be that you need to know each and everything about iOS and Android as well. But as you said, that's a good example. STL. STL is a file format for 3D printing and all. So there's no support as such for on Unity. Like consider simplest example is also you already mentioned about real money gaming, where assume that you want to have Stripe or Paytm integrated within your app. So there's no proper plugin for it. So you guys can create on your own, and you can publish it on store and see how it works. So basically, you need to find the requirement. That's the toughest part. Once you
Actually, I think Unity is making it that way very easily. Unity community is there where the developers are throwing up always some requirements of APIs there. I think many of the students are right now very explored very badly. I mean, they are very good in exploring the Unity community, everything. So I think that area will serve the answers, and I think they can get the requirements from that where the requirements are, what type of APIs are required and everything, more details and everything.
yes. Yeah. And one more
Oh,
thing,
really? Thanks for the session. It was really eye-opening session. It was very nice, actually. I hope many students have found the doubts. I hope they are. I hope they will be. They would have enjoyed the session without anything. I think that serves the points. Yeah.
and one last thing.
Yeah,
As you
please.
are already, I think all of the people here are studying, right? Still pursuing it, right?
Everyone is pursuing from semester. The students are here from semester 3 and semester 5. We
Okay.
have even semester 1 students are there, but they are not here. For them, it will be too early for them. Right? But semester 3 and semester 5 are the right students for to learn this concepts of
Okay.
native integrations. Yeah.
Okay. So, you need to explore a lot, because right now you have lots of options called. I'm not sure whether you're aware of Brackeys, or there are lots of communities within Discord. Probably you guys can go there. You can see how others are coding. You can, when it comes to artists, there are other groups within Discord where you can. I'll just mention it here. I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing it correctly or not. It's Discord. Just a second. Yeah, Discord. So just create a profile within Discord. Go search for the communities within related to Unity or art or anything of your choice. You can talk to people over there. You can watch people coding. You can do the pair programming and all. So it's very good opportunity for you guys, for this generation at least. So you can make use of online communities to improve your skills for sure. Yeah, and thanks a lot for the opportunity. And I hope you guys got at least an overview of what exactly the concepts are. And once you have any kind of questions or any kind of suggestions that you need, just you can mail to me. I'll provide.
You have any? I think you have any Discord channel link or anything, so the students are asking in the chat so that they will get to know they can join you or something.
Okay, you're asking my Discord channel.
Guys, you're asking about speakers Discord channel, right? Do you have anything like that? Are you maintaining any Discord to connect with you?
No, I don't have. I have my own ID, but I'll show you what exactly it is.
Yeah, the students are asking about the community which you have mentioned just now.
Okay. So that's Brackeys. I think this is a very popular one. Anyone who is into development, probably they might have gone through this. You just join over there, and around 12,000 people are already online. So you can. I'll show it up. Actually, that's much easier to get an idea.
If you can give that link in the this chat, that you've given. Okay, thanks.
I'll just open it up and show it to you how exactly it is. Just a second. So yeah, this is Brackeys. Okay. So right now you can see some people streaming. Okay, and you can watch the streams. You can guide them. You can mention them, like what are the problems that are facing and all. So it's a very nice way to interact with other people.
Here, look at this garden that we grew today. Shoots eggs.
So yeah. So they'll be creating the content and you can still watch it. So yeah, that's it, guys. Yeah, just try to join over there and try to spend some time and yeah, improve your skills.
Thank you so much, Ayappa, for your session. Valuable session. It was very nice. I think many students would have gotten good ideas about this. Thanks. We are looking forward for next time demonstration session, so that if you demonstrate practically, so I think they will have more clarity on this concepts and everything. That would serve them more in a clear picture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want to go much practical, but based on the audience, I want to react. So it's like I see that many people are not totally into development. So once they cross the current semester or something, probably they'll get in more, I mean, valuable information.
Oh, oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Almost 1
Yeah. And I think many students, you have to fill the feedback that's there in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback before you leave the meeting. Thank you so much. Looking forward for more sessions coming up to the next. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.